The smoke was so thick that Jake Morrison couldn't see his own hands as he crawled through the burning building. His lungs screamed for clean air, his eyes watered uncontrollably, but somewhere in that inferno, he'd heard a voice, weak, desperate, calling for help. As a construction worker, Jake knew buildings. He knew how long they could stand before they came down. And this one? It had maybe 2 minutes left. He found her crumpled near what used to be a stairwell, unconscious, her designer coat smoldering at the edges. Jake didn't think. Thinking would have reminded him that he had a 6-year-old daughter waiting for him at home, that Emma had already lost her mother to cancer 2 years ago, that he was all she had left in this world. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Someone needed help, and Jake Morrison had never been the kind of man who could walk away. He hoisted the woman over his shoulder and ran, if you could call it running, more like stumbling, lurching, feeling his way through the darkness while the fire roared around them like a living thing, hungry and angry. The heat was unbearable. His jacket caught fire. He felt it burning through to his skin but kept moving. Just a few more feet, just a few more steps. When he finally burst through the emergency exit, the cold October air hit him like a blessing. Jake collapsed on the sidewalk, the woman still in his arms, both of them coughing violently. Paramedics rushed forward, prying her from his grip, checking vitals, shouting medical terminology he didn't understand. Someone threw a blanket over his shoulders. Someone else was treating the burns on his arms and back. "You're a hero, man," a firefighter told him, clapping him on his uninjured shoulder. Jake just shook his head. He wasn't a hero. He was just a guy who couldn't live with himself if he hadn't tried. As they loaded the woman into an ambulance, Jake caught a glimpse of her face. Pale, delicate features smudged with soot. Long, dark hair matted with ash. She was breathing. That was all that mattered. The ambulance doors closed, sirens wailed, and she was gone. Jake gave his statement to the police, refused further medical treatment despite the paramedics' protests, and went home to his daughter. Emma was waiting at the neighbor's apartment, her small face pressed against the window. The moment she saw him, she flew into his arms, her little hands careful around his bandaged burns. "Daddy, Mrs. Chen said there was a big fire. Are you okay?" Jake held her tight, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, feeling his heart finally start to settle. "I'm okay, baby. I'm okay." That night, as he tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at him with those serious brown eyes that reminded him so much of her mother. "Mrs. Chen said you saved someone. A lady." "I just helped someone who needed help," Jake said softly, brushing hair from her forehead. "That's what we do, right? We help people when they need it." Emma nodded solemnly. "Mommy would be proud of you." Jake's throat tightened. "Yeah, sweetheart, I think she would." The burns hurt worse the next day. Jake's supervisor at the construction site took one look at him and sent him home with orders not to return until he was properly healed. It wasn't paid leave. Jake was a contractor, paid by the day. But he couldn't risk infection or making the injuries worse. He had Emma to think about. Still, watching his meager savings account dwindle as the days passed filled him with a quiet dread that was almost worse than the burns themselves. 3 weeks went by. Jake was back at work, moving a little slower than usual, his arms still wrapped in bandages under his long sleeves. Emma had adjusted to their tighter budget without complaint, accepting mac and cheese for dinner 3 nights in a row, without asking why they couldn't order pizza like they used to. She was a good kid. Too good. She deserved better than what Jake could give her, better than a 1-bedroom apartment where she slept on a fold-out couch in the living room, better than thrift store clothes and a dad who worked 60-hour weeks and still couldn't make ends meet. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Jake's entire world tilted on its axis. He was on a job site, hammering away at a frame, when Marcus, his co-worker, shouted over the noise. "Hey, Morrison, you got visitors!" Jake looked up, confused. Emma was at school. He wasn't expecting anyone. What he saw made him freeze, hammer suspended in mid-swing. At the edge of the construction site stood a woman in an elegant cream-colored coat, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Even from a distance, even without the soot and terror, Jake recognized her. It was the woman from the fire. But she wasn't alone. Flanking her were 4 men in dark suits, built like linebackers, their eyes hidden behind sunglasses despite the overcast sky. They moved with the kind of precision that spoke of military, training, of protection details, of a world Jake had only ever seen in movies. Behind them, a black SUV with tinted windows idled at the curb, and Jake could see more security inside. His heart started pounding, and it had nothing to do with physical exertion. The woman was walking toward him now, her security team moving, with her like a choreographed dance, and Jake's mind was racing through possibilities. Had he done something wrong? Was there some liability he didn't know about? Had saving her life somehow gotten him into trouble? She stopped a few feet away, and when she removed her sunglasses, Jake saw tears shimmering in her green eyes. "Morrison," she said, and her voice was exactly as he remembered it from that desperate cry in the flames, only now it was steady, refined, carrying the kind of authority that came from boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations. "My name is Victoria Hayes. 3 weeks ago, you saved my life." Jake stood there, acutely aware of the dust on his work boots, the grime under his fingernails, the sweat staining his flannel shirt. Around him, the construction site had gone silent. Every worker had stopped what they were doing to stare at the impossible scene unfolding. The elegant woman with her security detail facing down their most reliable framer. Jake started. But Victoria held up a hand. "Please, let me speak." She took a breath, composing herself. "I've spent the last 3 weeks trying to find you. The fire department wouldn't release your information. The police report listed you only as a witness. It took hiring 3 different private investigators before I finally learned your name." Jake's supervisor, Dale, had wandered over, his weathered face creased with concern. "Everything all right here, Morrison?" "I think so," Jake said, though he wasn't sure of anything anymore. Victoria's eyes hadn't left Jake's face. "You pulled me out of that building. You risked your life for a complete stranger. The doctors told me I would have died from smoke inhalation in another 2 minutes. 2 minutes. You gave me my life back and I didn't even know your name." The emotion in her voice was raw, real, and it made Jake uncomfortable. He wasn't good with gratitude, never had been. "Anyone would have done the same thing," he mumbled. "But they didn't." Victoria's voice was firm now. 37 people evacuated that building before the fire department arrived. 37 people passed by the stairwell where I was lying unconscious. You were the only one who went back in. One of the security guards leaned close to Victoria, murmuring something Jake couldn't hear. She nodded without looking away from him. "Mr. Morrison, I'd like to speak with you privately. Perhaps we could go somewhere more comfortable?" "My treat." Jake glanced at Dale, who was watching the exchange with undisguised fascination. His supervisor shrugged. "Clock out early, Morrison. I think you've earned it." 20 minutes later, Jake found himself sitting in a downtown restaurant so upscale that he felt like he should have entered through the back door. The menu didn't have prices, which Jake knew meant he couldn't afford anything on it. Victoria sat across from him, her security team positioned discreetly around the restaurant, and Jake tried not to feel like a complete fraud. "I should explain who I am," Victoria said after they'd ordered, or rather, after she'd ordered for both of them, saving Jake from having to admit he didn't recognize half the items on the menu. "My family owns Hayes Industries. We manufacture medical equipment and pharmaceuticals. I'm the CEO." Jake nearly choked on his water. He'd heard of Hayes Industries. Everyone had. They were worth billions. And he'd dragged their CEO out of a burning building like a sack of potatoes. "I was in that building for a charity meeting," Victoria continued. "We were discussing a partnership with a nonprofit that provides health care to underserved communities. The fire started in the electrical room. Faulty wiring, they think. Everyone evacuated so quickly. I went back for my briefcase." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My briefcase. I nearly died for a leather bag full of papers." "You couldn't have known," Jake said quietly. "No, but you did know. You knew that building was coming down, and you went in anyway." Victoria leaned forward and Jake saw the intensity in her eyes, the force of will that must have driven her to the top of a corporate empire. "I need you to understand something, Mr. Morrison. I don't take debts lightly. You gave me my life. I intend to repay that. Alarm bells went off in Jake's head. Look, Ms. Hayes, I appreciate the thought, but I don't want your money. I'm not looking for a reward. I'm not offering charity, Victoria said sharply. Then she softened. I'm sorry. I'm not explaining this well. May I ask you something personal? Jake shifted uncomfortably. I guess. The investigators I hired were very thorough. I know you're a single father. I know your daughter's name is Emma, that she's 6 years old, that her mother passed away from breast cancer 23 months ago. I know you work construction, 60 to 70 hours a week, and that you still struggle to cover rent and basic expenses. I know you spent 3 weeks out of work recovering from the burns you sustained saving me, and that those 3 weeks put you behind on your electricity bill. She paused. I know you're drowning, Mr. Morrison, and you're too proud to ask for help. Jake's hands clenched into fists under the table. The casual invasion of his privacy should have made him angry, but mostly he just felt exposed, vulnerable. You had no right. You're absolutely correct, Victoria interrupted. I didn't have the right. I did it anyway because I needed to understand the life of the man who saved mine. And what I found broke my heart. The food arrived. Some kind of fancy steak that probably cost more than Jake's weekly grocery budget. He stared at it, his appetite gone. I lost someone too, Victoria said quietly. My husband. 7 years ago. Car accident. We didn't have children, but I understand the weight of moving forward alone, of carrying grief while still having to function in the world. I understand how exhausting it is to be strong all the time. Jake looked up, and for the first time, he saw past the designer clothes and the security detail to the woman underneath. There was pain there, old and deep, the kind that never fully healed. What do you want from me? He asked. Nothing, Victoria said. But I want to give you something, a chance. Real chance at stability, at building a better life for your daughter. I told you I don't want. I have a proposition, Victoria said, cutting him off. Hear me out before you refuse. Hayes Industries has been developing a new community outreach program. We're renovating properties in underserved neighborhoods and converting them into mixed-use spaces, affordable housing, community centers, healthcare clinics. The program needs a project manager, someone who understands construction, who knows what these communities need, who has lived the struggle we're trying to address. Jake's heart was pounding again. I'm a construction worker. I don't manage projects. You coordinate crews, read blueprints, problem solve on the fly, and meet deadlines under pressure. That's project management. Victoria pulled a folder from her bag and slid it across the table. The position comes with a salary that's 3 times what you're making now, full health benefits, and a housing stipend. There's an apartment in one of our renovated buildings set aside for the program manager. 2 bedrooms, safe neighborhood, close to excellent schools. Jake opened the folder with trembling hands. The numbers on the page seemed impossible. With this salary, he could give Emma everything she deserved. Dance classes, a real bedroom, a college fund, security. Why? He whispered. Why me? Because 3 weeks ago, I learned that true character isn't found in boardrooms or charitable foundations. It's found in split-second decisions made when no one's watching, when there's no reward, when doing the right thing costs you everything. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You're exactly the kind of person I want representing Hayes Industries. You're exactly the kind of father I hope Emma knows she has. And selfishly, giving you this opportunity is the only way I can sleep at night knowing I've honored the gift you gave me. Jake closed the folder. His mind was spinning, hope and suspicion warring inside him. It was too much, too fast, too good to be true. I need time to think about this. Of course. Victoria pulled out a business card. That's my direct line. Call me when you're ready to talk. No pressure, Mr. Morrison. But please, at least consider it. As Jake left the restaurant, Victoria's security team parting to let him pass like the Red Sea, he felt like he was walking through a dream. The card in his pocket felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen, his neighbor, asking what time he'd pick up Emma. Everything came back to Emma, and maybe, just maybe, this was the universe's way of finally cutting them a break. Jake didn't sleep that night. He lay on his worn couch, the same couch that converted into Emma's bed, staring at Victoria's business card by the light of his phone screen. Every logical part of his brain screamed that this was too good to be true, that people like Victoria Hayes didn't just hand out six-figure jobs to construction workers, that there had to be a catch. But another part of him, the part that had been exhausted for 2 years straight, whispered, "What if it's real?" Emma found him there in the morning, still in yesterday's clothes, the business card gripped in his hand. "Daddy, did you sleep here?" Jake sat up quickly, trying to shake off the fog of sleeplessness. "Yeah, baby. Just fell asleep watching TV. Come here, let's get you some breakfast." As he poured cereal, the generic brand because it was 50 cents cheaper than the name brand, Emma chattered about school, about her friend Madison's birthday party that she'd been invited to, about how she needed poster board for a science project. Each request was a small knife to Jake's heart. Madison's birthday party meant a gift they couldn't afford. Poster board meant choosing between that and doing laundry at the laundromat this week. "Daddy?" Emma's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. "You look sad." Jake forced a smile. "Just tired, sweetheart. Hey, what would you say if I told you I might have a new job opportunity?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Would it mean you could come to my school's Thanksgiving play?" "You missed the last one because of work." The knife twisted deeper. "Yeah, baby. It would probably mean that." After dropping Emma at school, Jake found himself walking to the small park near their apartment. He sat on a bench, pulled out his phone, and stared at Victoria's number. Just call her, he told himself. Ask the questions. Find out what the catch is. But his finger hovered over the screen, frozen by pride and fear in equal measure. Jake Morrison? He looked up to find Victoria standing a few feet away, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. She looked younger, more approachable, though 2 of her security guards still lurked nearby. "Are you following me?" Jake asked, more surprised than angry. Victoria had the grace to look embarrassed. "One of my team may have mentioned you left your apartment this morning. I thought you might have questions. I wanted to make myself available. That's borderline stalking, you know." "I know. I'm sorry. The security detail makes me paranoid about going anywhere alone, and the instinct to protect became overreaching." She gestured to the bench. "May I sit?" Jake nodded, moving over to make room. For a moment they sat in silence, watching a mother push her toddler on the swings. "I had a daughter," Victoria said suddenly. "Or I would have. I was pregnant when my husband died. Lost the baby 3 weeks later from the stress and grief. The doctor said it was a girl." Jake felt his chest constrict. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. The investigators wouldn't have found that. I don't talk about it publicly." Victoria's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the old pain underneath. "I tell you this so you understand. When I look at you and Emma, I see what I lost. Chance at a family. The everyday moments that seemed mundane until they were gone. I'm not trying to replace what I lost through you, but I am trying to honor it by helping someone who represents everything I value." "I want to believe you," Jake said honestly. "But I've learned that when something seems too good to be true, it usually is. Ask me anything. Any question, any concern. I'll answer honestly." Jake turned to face her. "What happens if I'm not good at this job? If I fail, do Emma and I lose everything?" "The employment contract includes a 6-month trial period, standard for any position at this level. If during that time either party determines it's not a good fit, you'll receive severance pay equal to 6 months' salary and assistance in finding alternative employment. The housing isn't contingent on the job. Once you move in, you'll have a 2-year lease at the same reduced rate regardless of your employment status." "Why so generous?" Victoria smiled sadly. "Because I remember what it's like to lose everything and not have a safety net. My husband and I built Hayes Industries together. When he died, the board tried to force me out. They said I was too emotional, too compromised by grief to lead. It took 2 years of legal battles to maintain control of the company we'd built together. In that time, I learned that true security isn't about money. It's about having options when life knocks you down." Jake processed this. "I don't have a college degree. I barely graduated high school. You have something more valuable, real-world experience and genuine compassion. I can teach you the corporate side. I can't teach someone to care the way you do." Victoria pulled out her phone. Let me show you something. She pulled up photos of a building in various stages of renovation. This is the first property in our community program. 3 months ago, it was a condemned apartment complex. Now look at it. Jake scrolled through the images. The transformation was remarkable. Bright, clean units with modern kitchens, a ground-floor community center, a medical clinic in one wing. You did all this in 3 months? I had motivation. When I woke up in that hospital after the fire, I realized I'd been running Hayes Industries like a business, instead of like a legacy. My husband always said our success meant nothing if we didn't use it to lift others up. The fire reminded me that life is fragile and precious, that every day we waste is one we can't get back. She looked at Jake intently. You gave me a second chance at life. Let me give you a second chance at building one. I need to think about Emma. Whatever I decide affects her most of all. Of course. But Jake, Victoria waited until he met her eyes. Your daughter doesn't need more sacrifices from you. She needs a father who's present, who's not working himself to death, who can breathe without constantly worrying about money. You can't pour from an empty cup. Let someone refill yours for once. After Victoria left, Jake sat on that bench for another hour. He thought about Emma's face when he missed her school events. He thought about the times he'd pretended he wasn't hungry so she could have seconds. He thought about the weight of trying to be both mother and father to a little girl who deserved the world. He pulled out his, phone and called Victoria's number. Mr. Morrison. She answered immediately. Jake, he corrected. If we're going to work together, you should call me Jake. And I have one more question. Anything. Can I bring Emma to see the apartment before I make my final decision? I need to see her face when she looks at it. I need to know this is real for both of us. There was a pause, and when Victoria spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. How about tomorrow after school? I'll have cookies waiting. Jake smiled for the first time in what felt like weeks. She'd like that. Thank you, Victoria. No, Victoria said softly. Thank you for trusting me enough to try. That evening, Jake sat Emma down at their small kitchen table. Baby, I need to talk to you about something important. Emma looked up from her coloring book, her brown eyes curious. Is it about the new job? Yeah. Remember that lady I helped in the fire? She wants to offer me a job that would mean some big changes for us. Better changes. But I want to know what you think. Would you be happier, Daddy? The question, so simple and pure, nearly broke him. Yes, sweetheart. Think I would be. Emma nodded seriously. Then I think you should do it. You're always sad when you think I'm not looking. I want you to smile more. Jake pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest, fighting back tears. 6 years old and already more emotionally intelligent than most adults. When did you get so smart? Mommy used to say I got it from you, Emma said, her voice muffled against his shirt. Your mommy was biased. What's biased mean? It means she loved me enough to think I was better than I really am. Emma pulled back, her small hands framing his face. I think you're the best daddy in the whole world. That's not biased. That's just true. And there, in their cramped apartment with the leaky faucet and the heater that only worked half the time, Jake felt something shift inside him. Maybe he didn't have to do this alone anymore. Maybe accepting help wasn't weakness, maybe it was wisdom. Tomorrow after school, he said, we're going to go see a place that might become our new home. Can you keep an open mind about it? Emma's eyes went wide. A new home? With 2 bedrooms? Maybe, we'll see. She threw her arms around his neck. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl. More than anything in this world. The apartment building stood in a neighborhood Jake had driven through but never stopped in. It wasn't the wealthiest area, but it was clean, safe, with trees lining the streets and murals painted on brick walls. Children played in a small park across the street, their laughter carrying on the October breeze. Emma pressed her face against the car window, her breath fogging the glass. Is this really it, Daddy? Jake's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. This is it. Victoria was waiting outside the main entrance, wearing a warm smile and a casual outfit that made her seem less like a billionaire CEO and more like a kind aunt. When Emma climbed out of Jake's beat-up truck, Victoria crouched down to her level. You must be Emma. Your dad has told me so much about you. Emma ducked shyly behind Jake's leg. He told me about you too. He said you're very nice and you make buildings pretty. Victoria laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. I try to make them safe and comfortable. Would you like to see what we've done with this one? The lobby took Jake's breath away. Where he'd expected institutional coldness, there was warmth, soft lighting, comfortable seating areas, a community bulletin board covered with colorful notices for children's activities and job resources. A small library nook sat in one corner, shelves filled with books free for borrowing. The community center is on the ground floor, Victoria explained as they walked. We have after-school programs, job training, healthcare services twice a week. Everything is free for residents and available at low cost for the surrounding neighborhood. Emma had discovered the children's section of the library and was pulling books from the shelf with increasing excitement. Daddy, look! They have the entire Magic Treehouse series. Jake watched his daughter's joy with an ache in his chest. When was the last time he'd been able to buy her a new book? The apartment is on the 3rd floor, Victoria said, gesturing to the elevator. As they rode up, she added, I should mention that you'll have neighbors who are part of the community program, families transitioning out of homelessness, single parents rebuilding after setbacks, people getting back on their feet. This isn't just housing. It's a community of people supporting each other. The apartment door opened to a space flooded with natural light. 2 bedrooms, actual bedrooms with doors that closed. A kitchen with appliances that looked like they'd been manufactured in this decade. A living room large enough for Emma to actually play in. Windows that overlooked the park across the street. Emma stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide. Daddy, do we really get to live here? Maybe, baby. If I take the job. Your room would be this one, Victoria said, opening a door to reveal a bedroom painted a soft lavender, with built-in shelves perfect for toys and books. I took the liberty of asking Jake what your favorite color was. Emma walked into the room like she was entering a cathedral, her hands reaching out to touch the walls as if they might disappear. It's purple, she whispered. My whole room is purple. Jake's eyes burned with unshed tears. He turned away, pretending to examine the kitchen, but Victoria followed him. Too much? She asked quietly. It's perfect, Jake managed. That's what scares me. Jake. Victoria's voice was gentle but firm. You're allowed to have good things. You're allowed to accept help. It doesn't make you weak or less of a father. It makes you human. I don't know how to do this. The job, this life, it's so far from anything I know. Then we'll figure it out together. Victoria pulled out a thick binder. This is the project manual. Every procedure, every contact, every resource you'll need. And I'll be there. Not micromanaging, but available. My direct line isn't just for emergencies. It's for questions, concerns, or just talking through a problem. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face glowing. Daddy, there's a park right outside, and I can see a school from my window. Can we say yes, please? Jake looked at his daughter, at Victoria, at the apartment that represented everything he'd been struggling to give Emma for 2 years. The fear was still there, coiled in his stomach, but it was smaller now than the hope blooming in his chest. Yeah, baby, he said, his voice rough. I think we can say yes. Emma launched herself into his arms, squealing with delight. Over her head, Jake met Victoria's eyes. Thank you, he mouthed. Victoria smiled, but there were tears on her cheeks. No, thank you, for showing me what really matters. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Jake gave notice at the construction company, where Dale shook his hand and told him he'd earned every bit of good fortune coming his way. Emma said goodbye to Mrs. Chen, who cried and made them promise to visit often. The meager possessions from their old apartment looked lost in the spacious rooms of the new one. But Victoria had arranged for furniture delivery, standard for all program participants. She'd insisted when Jake protested. On Jake's first day at Hayes Industries, Emma held his hand all the way to the office building downtown. It was a Saturday, and Victoria had suggested bringing Emma along to ease the transition. I want her to see where her daddy works, Victoria had explained. I want her to feel connected to this new chapter. The office was eerily quiet on the weekend, their footsteps echoing in marble hallways. Victoria's office was on the top floor with windows overlooking the entire city. Emma pressed her nose against the glass, marveling at how small everything looked from up high. Your daddy is going to do something very important, Victoria told Emma. He's going to help families like yours find safe, happy places to live. He's going to give other people the same chance someone gave me, a second beginning. Emma looked between Victoria and her father with a wisdom that belied her 6 years. Daddy saved you, so you saved us back. Victoria's breath caught. Yes, that's exactly it. Jake spent the next weeks immersed in training, learning the corporate systems and procedures that govern the community program. It was overwhelming. The budgets, the regulations, the endless meetings. But whenever he felt himself drowning, he'd remember Emma's face when she saw her purple bedroom, and he'd push through. Victoria was true to her word. She was present but not overbearing, answering his questions with patience, connecting him with other managers who could share their expertise. She included him in high-level meetings about the program's expansion, valuing his perspective in a way that made Jake feel less like an imposter and more like a vital part of something meaningful. But the transition wasn't without challenges. Some of Hayes Industries' longtime executives made their skepticism clear. In one meeting, a silver-haired VP named Richard openly questioned Jake's qualifications. With all due respect, Ms. Hayes, this position requires someone with proven project management experience and a thorough understanding of corporate governance. Mr. Morrison has 12 years of hands-on construction experience and an intimate understanding of the communities we're trying to serve. Victoria replied coolly. That's worth more than any MBA. After the meeting, Jake caught up with Victoria in the hallway. He has a point. Maybe I'm not— Stop! Victoria turned to face him, her eyes fierce. Richard has spent 20 years in boardrooms, making decisions that affect people he's never met. You've lived the reality those decisions create. Don't let anyone make you feel less than because you took a different path to get here. But the doubt gnawed at Jake, especially when he struggled with the software systems or stumbled over corporate jargon in meetings. He started staying late, poring over the project manuals, determined to prove he belonged. Emma would do her homework at his desk, coloring pictures of the buildings Daddy helped fix. It was Emma who finally made him see clearly. One evening, as Jake hunched over his laptop, she climbed into his lap and put her small hands on either side of his face, forcing him to look at her. Daddy, you're doing that thing again. What thing, baby? The thing where you forget to be happy. Miss Victoria gave us this wonderful home and this wonderful job, but you're still sad. Why? Jake felt something break open inside him. I'm scared, Emma. Scared I'll mess up and we'll lose everything. Emma's expression grew serious. Miss Victoria told me something when you were in your meeting. She said that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the important thing even when you are scared. You taught me that, Daddy. When Mommy was sick and you were so scared, but you still got up every day and took care of both of us. Out of the mouths of babes. Jake held his daughter close, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo, letting her wisdom settle over him like a blanket. You're right, baby girl. You're absolutely right. 3 months into his new position, Jake stood in the community center of the building he now called home, watching a children's Christmas party unfold. Emma was among the kids decorating cookies. Her purple dress, a gift from Victoria that Jake had initially tried to refuse before realizing he was being ridiculous, dusted with flour and frosting. The building was filled with residents now, 40 families total, each with their own story of hardship and hope. Jake had learned their names, their histories, their dreams. There was Maria, a single mother of 3 who'd lost her apartment when her ex-husband stopped paying child support. There was Robert, a veteran with PTSD who'd lived in his car for 8 months before finding this place. There was the Chen family, no relation to Jake's former neighbor, refugees who'd arrived in America with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Each of them had been given a second chance. And somehow, impossibly, Jake had become part of the team making those chances possible. Quite a transformation. Victoria appeared beside him, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. She handed one to Jake. And I'm not just talking about the building. Jake smiled, accepting the drink. I still can't believe this is real sometimes. That I get paid to do this. You've exceeded every expectation, Victoria said. The efficiency improvements you've implemented have saved the program 30% on renovation costs. Your proposal for the job training component was brilliant. And the families, Jake, they trust you in a way they'd never trust someone who hadn't walked in their shoes. I just remember what it felt like, Jake said quietly. The fear, the exhaustion, the shame of not being able to provide. If I can spare even one person that feeling, it's worth it. Victoria was quiet for a moment, watching Emma laugh with the other children. I have something to tell you. The board approved expansion of the program. We're buying 3 more properties next year, which means we'll need additional staff. I want you to help me build and train that team. Jake's heart leaped. You're serious? Completely. You've proven that this model works, that having someone with lived experience at the helm makes all the difference. I'm also increasing your salary by 20%, effective immediately. Before you argue, she added, seeing his mouth open, it's the standard raise for employees who exceed performance metrics. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stay. Say you'll help me expand this dream. Victoria's eyes were bright with passion. When I woke up in that hospital after the fire, I made a promise to myself that if I survived, I'd stop letting fear hold me back from meaningful work. You made that possible, Jake. This program, these families, it's my way of honoring the gift you gave me. But it's become so much more than that. It's become proof that compassion and business can coexist, that profit and purpose aren't mutually exclusive. Before Jake could respond, Emma came running over, a frosted cookie in each hand. Daddy, Miss Victoria, I made these for you. The cookies were lopsided and covered in an alarming amount of green frosting, but they were offered with such pride that both adults accepted them solemnly. These are the most beautiful cookies I've ever seen, Victoria said seriously. Emma beamed. They're Christmas trees. Well, they're supposed to be. Madison said they look like green blobs, but I told her she was wrong. Madison clearly has no appreciation for abstract art, Jake said, biting into his cookie and trying not to wince at the sheer amount of sugar. Emma giggled and ran back to her friends, leaving green frosting fingerprints on Jake's sleeve. He looked down at them with a feeling of contentment so profound it nearly knocked him over. When was the last time he'd worried about stains on his clothes? When had life become something other than a constant struggle for survival? I'll stay, he told Victoria, and I'll help you build this team. On one condition, Victoria raised an eyebrow. I'm almost afraid to ask. We hire from within the communities we're serving, former residents who've stabilized, people who understand the journey, not for every position but whenever possible. They deserve the same chance you gave me. Victoria's smile was radiant. Jake Morrison, that's why you're invaluable. I would never have thought of that, but it's perfect. Consider it done. The party continued around them, and Jake found himself thinking about the journey that had led him here. 2 years of grinding poverty and exhaustion, nights when he'd lie awake calculating whether they could afford both heat and food. The constant weight of trying to be everything Emma needed, while feeling like he was failing at all of it. The fire had seemed like just another disaster in a life full of them, until it became the catalyst for everything changing. Later that evening, after Emma had fallen asleep in her purple bedroom surrounded by new toys from the building's toy drive, Jake stood in his living room and took stock of his life. The apartment was decorated for Christmas now, a small tree in the corner that Emma had helped him pick out. Stockings hung over a radiator that actually worked. Cards from neighbors displayed on the kitchen counter. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Thank you for making tonight special. Those families will remember this Christmas as the one where things started getting better. You're changing lives, Jake, never forget that. Jake typed back, we're changing lives. This is our project, not just mine. Partners, remember? 3 dots appeared, then partners. I like that. Sleep well, my friend? The word settled into Jake's chest with warmth. Victoria had become more than his boss over these months. She'd become someone he trusted, someone he valued, someone whose opinion mattered to him in ways that had nothing to do with his paycheck. Their relationship had evolved from gratitude and guilt into genuine mutual respect and affection. But Jake was careful not to misread the situation. Victoria was a billionaire CEO with a world of options. He was a construction worker turned project manager, a single dad doing his best to build a better life. The gulf between them remained vast, even if it felt smaller during their conversations about the program. or their shared grief over lost spouses. Emma stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about cookies, and Jake smiled. Whatever complexities existed in his relationship with Victoria, one thing was simple. His daughter was thriving. Emma had friends now, confidence, a stability she'd never known. Her teacher reported that her grades had improved dramatically. She'd started talking about what she wanted to be when she grew up. Last week it was a veterinarian. This week an astronaut. The tight, worried expression she'd worn for 2 years had melted away, replaced by the carefree joy of a child who felt secure. That alone made everything worth it. The week between Christmas and New Year's brought an unexpected complication. Jake was at the office late, not because he had to be, but because he was working on a proposal for the new properties, when Victoria knocked on his open door. "Burning the midnight oil?" she asked. Jake looked up, surprised to see her still in the building. "I could ask you the same thing." Victoria entered his office, and Jake noticed she looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that went bone deep. "I had a board meeting that ran long. Some members are questioning the expansion, saying we're overextending resources that should go to shareholders." "Are we?" Jake asked, concerned. "No. The program is performing better than projected, both financially and in terms of community impact. But there are board members who will never see past the bottom line." Victoria sank into the chair across from his desk. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm fighting a losing battle, trying to prove that a corporation can have a conscience." "You're not," Jake said firmly. "I've seen what this program does. Maria got a job because of the training center. Robert is off his medications because he finally has stable housing and community support. The Chen kids are thriving in their new school. These aren't just statistics. They're real people whose lives are fundamentally different because you decided that saving me meant saving others too." Victoria's eyes glistened. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't. I just tell the truth as I see it." Jake hesitated, then added, "Victoria, I know we come from different worlds. I know your life is board meetings and corporate strategy and wealth I can't even imagine. But you're not just a CEO to me. You're someone who sees people, who values dignity over profit, who had every reason to give up after your losses but chose to build something beautiful instead. Don't let anyone make you question that." The silence stretched between them, charged with something Jake couldn't quite name. Victoria stood abruptly. "Thank you. I needed to hear that tonight." She moved toward the door, then paused. "Jake, would you and Emma like to join me for New Year's dinner? Nothing fancy, just I find myself not wanting to be alone that night, and I thought perhaps you might feel the same." Jake's heart did something complicated in his chest. "We'd like that. Emma asks about you constantly anyway. I think she's adopted you as an honorary aunt." Victoria's smile was bittersweet. "I'd be honored to be Emma's aunt." "See you New Year's Eve, then. My place at 7? After she left, Jake sat in the quiet office and acknowledged what he'd been trying to ignore for weeks. His feelings for Victoria had evolved beyond gratitude and friendship into something deeper, more complicated, but he wouldn't act on it, couldn't. Their relationship was already too important, too valuable to risk on romantic feelings that might not be reciprocated. Emma deserved stability, more than Jake deserved companionship. New Year's Eve at Victoria's penthouse was a revelation. Jake had expected opulence, but what he found was a home filled with photographs and memories. Pictures of Victoria with her late husband, their wedding day, candid shots of a life cut short. Instead of making Jake uncomfortable, the photos made Victoria seem more human, more real. Emma was enchanted by everything, especially Victoria's collection of snow globes from around the world. "My husband collected them," Victoria explained, showing Emma how to make the snow swirl. "Every place we traveled, we'd find one to bring home." "Did you love him very much?" Emma asked with the bluntness of childhood. "More than I knew was possible," Victoria said softly. "Losing him taught me that love doesn't end when someone dies. It just changes form. I carry him with me every day." Emma nodded seriously. "Like how Daddy carries Mommy. He talks to her picture sometimes when he thinks I'm asleep." Jake felt his face flush, but Victoria just smiled gently. "That's beautiful, Emma. It means your daddy's heart is big enough to hold both grief and joy." They ate dinner, pizza, at Emma's request, which made Victoria laugh, and played board games until Emma fell asleep on the couch. Her head in Jake's lap, Victoria brought out blankets and tucked them around the sleeping child with a tenderness that made Jake's chest ache. "She's wonderful," Victoria whispered. "You've done an amazing job raising her. I've done my best. Some days that felt like nowhere near enough." "Jake." Victoria sat beside him on the couch. "Can I tell you something? When I lost my baby, I thought I'd never have the chance to be around children in a meaningful way. My world became so sterile, so corporate. But watching you with Emma, seeing how you navigate fatherhood with such grace and devotion, it's helped heal something in me I didn't know was still broken." "You've healed something in us too," Jake said quietly. "Not just the financial stability, though God knows that matters. But you've shown Emma that there are good people in the world, people who help without expecting anything in return. You've taught her generosity by example. I got so much more than I gave." They sat in comfortable silence as the city lights sparkled below, Emma sleeping peacefully between them. When midnight approached, Victoria turned on the television to watch the ball drop in Times Square. 3, 2, 1. "Happy New Year!" The screen erupted in celebration. "Happy New Year, Jake," Victoria said softly. "Happy New Year, Victoria." Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding that transcended words. Jake saw his own feelings reflected in Victoria's eyes, the longing, the hesitation, the fear of risking something precious. "Jake, Victoria started. Emma stirred, murmuring sleepily. "Is it the new year yet?" The moment broke. Victoria smiled. "It is, sweetheart. Welcome to a new beginning. I hope this year is as good as the last one got," Emma said, already drifting back to sleep. "I hope we all stay together." Out of the mouths of babes once again. Jake carried Emma home through the quiet streets, her arms around his neck, her breath warm against his collar. As he tucked her into bed, she opened her eyes briefly. "Daddy? Do you think Miss Victoria is lonely?" "Maybe sometimes, baby. Why?" "Because she looks at us the way I look at Madison's family. Like she wishes she could be part of it." Emma yawned. "I wish she could be our family. I think she'd be a really good mom." After Emma fell asleep, Jake stood at his window, looking out at the city and thinking about family, about second chances, about the complicated ways that loss and love intertwined. He thought about Victoria's expression when Emma said she hoped they'd all stay together. He thought about the way his heart felt simultaneously full and fragile whenever Victoria was near. But more than anything, he thought about Emma's simple wisdom. "I think she'd be a really good mom." The question wasn't whether Jake and Victoria had feelings for each other. It was what they would do about them.